After their exodus from Egypt, the Israelites arrived at the plains of Moab. Thousands of tents stretched across the horizon, establishing a massive footprint. Looking down at this multitude, King Balak of Moab felt outmatched. To protect his territory, he decided physical warfare would fail. He needed a supernatural solution. He sent a delegation to a renowned prophet named Balaam, offering a fortune in exchange for a single service: place a curse on the Israelite people. When Balaam took the request to God, the answer was immediate and absolute. God commanded him not to go, clearly stating that the Israelites were a blessed people who could not be cursed. Initially, Balaam obeyed the command. He refused the offer and sent the messengers away. At this specific moment, the lines were drawn. Balaam knew the strict will of God, and outwardly he had complied. But Balak refused to accept the rejection. He dispatched a second, more prestigious group of officials, carrying the promise of even greater wealth and personal honor for the prophet. Faced with this massive escalation in payment, Balaam made a critical error. He already possessed God's definitive answer, yet the sheer volume of the reward tempted him to go back and ask for permission a second time. This moment exposes the central tension of the story, the dangerous gap between knowing God's revealed will and harboring a hidden desire to circumvent it. God permitted him to go, but with a strict condition: Balaam could only speak the specific words God dictated. With that, Balaam began the long, dusty journey to Moab. But on the road, the angel of the Lord stood in his path with a drawn sword, opposing the prophet. Ironically, the famous seer was completely blind to the threat in front of him. It was his humble donkey that actually saw the terrifying spiritual danger and refused to take another step. God used both the animal and the angel to sharply rebuke Balaam, reminding him that he was under absolute, inescapable authority. He could not force a curse if God did not allow it. By the time Balaam finally arrived in Moab, he was thoroughly warned. His physical journey was complete, but his obedience was entirely forced, rather than willing. King Balak brought Balaam to a high vantage point overlooking the Israelite camp, preparing ancient altars for the ritual. The king demanded the curse he had paid for, but God's power completely overrode Balaam's intentions. Over 3 separate attempts from 3 different peaks, Balaam opened his mouth to curse the camp, and instead found himself forced to speak profound blessings over Israel. Balak was furious. He sent the prophet away with nothing. Balaam technically obeyed the letter of God's command, to the absolute frustration of his own greed. Yet, shortly after this victory, disaster struck the camp. The Israelites collapsed internally, falling heavily into idolatry and severe sexual immorality with Moabite women. If God's sovereignty completely blocked the Moabites from cursing Israel from the outside, how did this internal collapse happen so quickly? The book of Numbers, chapter 31, verse 16, provides the historical detail. Moses explicitly names Balaam's secret advice as the direct catalyst for the catastrophe. Unable to execute a direct curse, Balaam offered Balak a workaround. He taught the king how to introduce foreign women and idols into the camp, effectively making the Israelites curse themselves through their own sin. Centuries later, the apostles examined Balaam's actions to warn the early church. 2 Peter 2:15 exposes his root motivation. He loved the wages of unrighteousness. Jude and Revelation echo this, condemning him for teaching Balak to put a stumbling block before God's people. The apostolic verdict is clear. Balaam's outward obedience in declaring the blessings meant nothing, because it was invalidated by the internal corruption of his heart. He began as a man who possessed direct communication with God, yet history remembers him as a symbol of spiritual betrayal. Merely knowing, or even speaking, God's will is insufficient. True service requires complete obedience from the heart. Those who perform right actions but harbor a secret love for worldly reward will ultimately destroy themselves and the people they serve.